as it used to be, but,
I can't stand traffic.
yeah, no, the traffic, yeah, no, the traffic is intolerable. Years ago, I kept my Airstream trailer at the Pecan Grove RV Park, right there next to Zolfer Park. Yeah,
That was the best.
oh, it was fabulous. I spent 3 days a week in Austin, you know, just being there. And it was, I was going to a yoga teacher training school. It was just wonderful.
I think he even had some movie stars
Oh, yeah.
in there.
I'm not surprised. Well, it's prime real estate, but nobody could touch it because of these old pecan trees that were protected. It's crazy.
All right, the report good?
All right.
Yes. Sorry about that. We got it going.
Okay, at 2:44, call to order the meeting of the Ordinance Review Committee. Could you call the roll, please? Secretary.
Chairperson Jim Miller,
Here.
Vice Chair Rebecca, Member Karen Decken, Member Donna Hector,
Here.
Member Randy Ranger,
Here.
and the Davenport. Here.
Okay, having the quorum, we'll move on. Any public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, the report from the committee liaison.
The only thing to report right now is that for the workshop coming after the council meeting in about 2 weeks or so, I submitted an item on y'all's behalf based on conversations y'all have been having in your meetings that basically states that council could reconsider what direction to give you all, as far as the direction coming from them, and so that, and in the notes, I wrote a suggestion made by Karen Duncan that, if council were to send you all any ordinances to review, that they be ones that are of the nature of actually impacting residents rather than some of the more legally stuff or, function of city stuff. And that if council were to send y'all anything, that it be focused on items that a resident body would have very relevant and valid feedback able to provide without having to dive into chapters and chapters of state code as much.
Sure. And just to go on with that, not looking for a broad brush of things to do, if they have something specific.
Okay.
That they would like us to work on, because we don't want to get into this broad rush of having to deal with 3 or 4 ordinances at a time.
Right.
And if nothing is coming from them, we'll go ahead and choose from the important list that we created.
Whenever y'all decide, I just wanted to loop council back in on that conversation on your behalf and let them know, because I gave them a report, but there was no actionable item attached to it because y'all hadn't really given that direction.
Right.
So in putting in the workshop, council can kind of freely discuss it and see if anything comes up. And if nothing comes up, then we know, but maybe something will come up, so.
Sure.
So does council know that we're working on these?
At this point in time, they only know what happened in the last meeting, which was that you all brought them up, created special ad hoc work groups. But because of the sequencing of these meetings, that was all that I could report to them. Now we have your agendas out now. Now I have actual work to see, and then based on whatever votes you have here, then I'll take that report to them. And if there's any materials with it that will follow the train, then I won't be able to submit an actionable item for the next meeting, meaning like if you all were to pass all of these items today and you wanted council to review and give input and maybe consider passing them as well, that wouldn't happen until if there was a special meeting, the second meeting of April. And if there's not a special meeting, then March.
No, we didn't.
May. Whatever meeting in month. What's next?
Yeah, and on that theme, it was mentioned that others may be working on ordinances. Randy, maybe you were working on something, I don't know. If anybody else is working on, let me know so we can go ahead and put it on the agenda.
Can I have so.
Are you giving your report or?
Sure, I can give I have more questions on, so as for what's on here today,
Yes, sir.
it was from an ad hoc committee that brought it to y'all? No, how did it get on there today?
The ad hoc committee was created to do the background work and to dissect ordinances so that the full committee can give a more enlightened, a more educated opinion on the wording. So the ad hoc, the revised text comes from the ad hoc committee,
Which was
Mr. Miller and.
Which was given to them by council?
No, sir, they did that in our last meeting.
this was on these ordinances were on last month's agenda as unfinished work. That's why they're listed as new business, but technically they're unfinished.
So they were from the previous, way back when, it went to ad hoc committee, they done with it, now y'all gonna.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it was decided at the last meeting that an ad hoc committee would be created to further study what was on the agenda of last month.
Okay, good.
Okay.
From their body. There was an ad hoc committee from their body.
Correct,
Yeah.
they did that, okay, yeah, no, that's fine.
And that has created the revised text, which is what we're gonna go over today
Okay,
in the workshops.
okay, that's good, I'm on board.
Okay.
I just, yeah,
Nothing to report? Okay, I'll make an effort, going forward to try to get stuff to you in a manner so that we can timely post, the agenda and the documents, make sure they get, because I would like everybody to have 10 days.
well, that's 10 days is when staff is it. Now, we don't have to report it or post it legally until 72 hours before the meeting. Now, we will try to give it out as fast as we can, but as for legally, what we're required to do is 72 hours.
Okay, well, I'll get with you for the next month and we'll talk about it, but,
Okay.
well, let's see if we can get it posted as quickly as possible.
Oh, we do.
Okay.
We will.
Okay, so let's move on to new business. Item 2, which is a workshop to discuss a revision of chapter 95, opening it at 2:50. Anyone have any questions? I can go over each of the suggestions from the ad hoc committee. And then you can ask your question. The person we hit was 9502. What you need is the document that says edited version. I'm just showing you. It looks like this. Edited version of chapter 95, health and sanitation. Did you look at it?
Yes.
Okay, that first paragraph, for some reason, they kept referring to private sewage treatment facilities, which we assume are septic systems. So we put septic systems in parentheses. Now, I don't know if there are any other kind of private sewage treatment facility in Wood Creek, but, so we just clarified that. Also, the original wording was odd in that it seemed to point at property first. And what we did was we just kind of turned it around. We didn't say much different, except stagnant water instead of stagnant filth. We put filth in there. So the green wording is our suggested replacement for the current wording. And it's already been noted to me that mosquitoes is to be spelled TOES. So we'll make that change. And then if you'll notice property, we did keep property in there, but we put it at the end. Okay, the 9503 definition. And again, if anybody has any questions, you can stop me. We replaced the word chattel under building. We replaced it with tangible personal property. Now, if any time you want to refer to the original wording, the original text is also in your packet.
Where's the, page 11?
Yes.
Okay, so you changed, you took out chattel in
Replaced
place.
it with tangible personal property.
Okay, why is that not red line? I don't see chattel.
Well,
with a red line.
green is a replacement.
Well, you need to, if I can make a suggestion, going forward, like when you, the paragraph down where it says is unsightly,
Right.
if you will mark that out in red, such as chattel up there.
You're right.
And then input next to it, tangible personal property. That way that we know that you took out that word and replaced it with tangible personal property. It will help in the revision process.
Okay, I'll
Just
do
for,
that. No, that's good suggestion. I'll do that. Deborah, just so you know, if these are voted on to move on, I will get you a
Perfect.
revised revision. Okay, moving on to is unsightly. We removed, that's under dangerous vegetation. We just thought that was too subjective. I mean, we want you to retain the right to plant ugly plants.
Well, and who's to say what's ugly inside? Yeah.
Correct. We removed fire safety buffer zone. That should be moved to, site plan. That refers to when you're building on property.
Say what page you're on. I've lost you now.
That's still on the first page.
Oh, you're still on that? Okay, okay.
Was it 11?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Then on page 12, under nuisance, this was funny. Impure, unwholesome matter of any kind. Council person Duncan thought it sounded too much like porn. So we revised that, we took that out. We kept basically what we thought was the power of the description, but and then we added or a condition with potential to cause or promote pathogens and infection. Again, that is a replacement, Kevin. I'll go back and put the original in there and show that. But a public health nuisance refers to the pathogens, infection or disease. So we put that in. I'm under objectionable. I took out or should be. I mean, if it's objectionable, then you say or should be objectionable. I'm not sure what that is. You know.
Well, and that leaves it open, I mean, should is, subjective.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's just the idea, it should be objectionable. Again, you're, like you said, it's subjective, it's like.
well, I think that's too, one reason why I think it's in there is because what you consider objectable, it may not be considered what I would think is objectable. And so should be is a legal term that the normal person would understand that it would be an objectable. And that's why it should be, just because you may think that wearing green is not objectable, but I do. But if the society norm states that, okay, green is unacceptable.
Right, but
that's why that is in there. It's a legalese of why it's in there, but I'm being devil's advocate here.
Right, but we would like to err on the part of not making it objectionable. In other words, if one person likes green shirts and another person doesn't, well, let them wear the green shirt. Don't take away the green shirt just because one person doesn't like it.
And there's somewhere else, I don't remember, where we've spelled out, what a normal citizen would consider objectionable. I don't remember where that is, so, if for some legal reason you need that in there, we can change that wording.
Well, there's plenty of teeth in this ordinance
Yeah, I think so
to
too.
remove
Yeah.
things. But, yes,
That entire definition is subjective, and I would, toward council recommend that they strike it entirely, just to let you know. The only portion of it that is relevant is unsanitary, because that is a quantifiable thing. and, things being unsightly. Unfortunately, regulating the aesthetics in a city is a little bit difficult. So, just something to keep in mind, that the terminology matters. And so if you want to anchor it in things that we can actually regulate, it would be to focus on stuff that is unhealthy.
Right, which is why we emphasize the public health use.
Right, so to me, most of this definition would be something that I would, if this moves to council, recommend striking or rewording entirely, because it's subjective. And having staff argue whether or not somebody with ordinary sensitivities would be offended or not is difficult, because what does that even mean?
That's a very good point. I had an issue recently, a lot of people in Wood Creek have Christian crosses in front of their houses, these white crosses.
Mhm.
Which my granddaughter thought meant a lot of people had had car accidents, and she wondered why people were such bad drivers. But anyway, they've got these white crosses. Well, I had Tibetan prayer flags. Now, they were in my backyard, but they were visible over the fence. And a neighbor, who's a good neighbor and a friend, objected because she's a Christian and the Tibetan prayer flags upset her. And she wanted me to take them down, which I did. I have no reason to be a bad neighbor, so I did. But, you're right. I mean, I'm not bothered by her white cross, but she was bothered by my Tibetan prayer flag. So Deborah's made a very good point that this, we don't want to be regulating minutia like that and say you can have a white cross, but you can't have a Tibetan prayer flag. You have to specify once you start specifying.
Right, it's just a suggestion to keep in mind that throughout this process that any regulations are anchored in like quantifiable things, like providing actual time limits. If you have debris built up, what is the appropriate amount of time that someone could have something out,
Well, getting back to this definition of nuisance,
Yeah.
then we probably should take out unsightly or, and then what's left is simply the public health, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to take out
That would
objectionable.
eliminate the objectionable and unsanitary definition entirely, because it's covered under nuisance.
That mean I can put my prayer flags Sorry, Junior, okay, this is you.
Yeah.
Unsightly or. Now, objectionable,
And I say it's covered under nuisance,
right, so take out that whole,
whole thing. Very good.
is nuisance referenced anywhere in here?
One difference.
Well, it's defined right above this, bill carrying stagnant water rubbish, see that?
Yeah, but is it referenced? Do we need to define it?
Yes.
I think we should.
If it's not used anywhere, why would we?
Nuisance is like the legal terminology used to describe anything, meaning like, not to hit a hot button, but if the city were to try to ban short-term rental, for example, they get declared a public nuisance. Like, it's just a legal term. Something is a nuisance, like in our tree ordinances, trees with pests or disease are declared nuisances, and then that gives the city an actionable offense to create some sort of enforcement policy. So I believe it is referenced in this chapter, considering that it's like all about sanitation. And I think at some point it does go into the fact that these things are all declared nuisances. That's a common phrase all over our code, like listing a series of things saying they are a nuisance and are thus prohibited or will be regulated.
I think it's okay as long as we keep it focused on the public health rather than Tibetan flag. Are you okay with that, Randy? Or?
Yeah, I don't think I agree with it, but it is what understand why we would want to define something that we never use the word.
I believe it is used, maybe not in this one, not do it. I have to go back and look through all of it.
It does, in some cases, though, it does list rubbish, refuge, trash, that kind of thing. So nuisance is kind of an overall word for those specific things. That would be the only way, that would be how I guess it would be important to have it.
I'll keep looking at it if y'all wanna keep going, and I'll keep double checking for nuisance,
Okay,
and if I find it, I'll send that.
9504, A. We replaced, it said whole or place. I changed it to location. And again, on C, we added septic systems in parentheses under private sewage system. Again, it's just meant to help someone if they were reading this to understand what we were talking about. Okay, the next page, which is what, 13?
That's 13.
Okay. B, number 1, we took out for more than 4 days. This is covered under the construction ordinance, which says it has to be removed daily. So this would be a conflict with that, so we took out for more than 4 days. It has to be kept free from junk. Have I got that? Okay. All right, then number 2, this was kind of confusing. Again, it seems like it's should be part of the site development or construction. Made below is secured at all times, et cetera, et cetera. The animal-proof containers, we deleted because that's under C. And 4, affordable toilet is provided. Again, all that should be on the,
Under construction.
under construction.
So is it under construction? Do you know? I mean,
See, it says
I
if you
didn't
go up
look,
to
I'm
B,
sorry.
that's all right, if you go up to B, where all these other persons, when building on site,
So,
shall be responsible.
I forgot, I saw that, but I forgot to look to see if it was under construction. If it's under construction, we don't need it there, but if it's not, it needs to be under construction.
Right, it is, so.
So it's under construction, okay. So,
Now going down to F, we took out dangerous vegetation. I'm not sure what a dangerous vegetation is. Maybe poison ivy.
That's the first thing I thought of when I first read that was
Poison ivy.
poison ivy. Although the National Gardener did send out on April Fool's Day, they sent out a special on positive poison ivy.
If anyone wants to grow poison ivy in their yard, they deserve what they get. We changed 6 inches to 12. 6 inches seems a little small.
Yeah, it is.
In this part of the world. Although it was noted that parking areas, if it goes over 6 inches, it might reach up to the catalytic converter or such and then pose a safety hazard. So we kept in grasses and parking areas should be maintained at 6 inches or less for fire escape.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Vegetation to grow to a height greater than 12 inches on such property. There are a lot of wildflowers that are not blooming yet, but that are growing that, 12 inches is that high. Do we make any allowance for wildflowers?
Yeah, I have 3-foot ones in my backyard, I know.
Yeah.
I forget what they're called, but Like purple and.
Milkweed grows tall.
Well,
Which is-
I forget what the ones in my front yard are called, but they're not Indian blankets, they're the other ones, colorful like that. At any rate, they're probably this tall and,
Well,
I hate
I
to
looked
put
at this, and I have a vacant lot, it's mine next door, and there are spots that I know the natural grasses are taller than 12 inches. But I'm thinking, what we're trying to do is common sense. I don't see somebody driving by and seeing a small patch of grass, you know, that's too tall, or wildflowers, who's gonna say, you gotta go cut them down. I mean,
well,
that's what
especially
we,
since we're trying to conserve water, you know, the days of these manicured lawns that get watered every other day, with a big sprinkler system, hopefully are going by the wayside, and
Right.
people are having more natural yards, which we still want to maintain, a neat look in our community, and one that everybody, or most, the majority agrees is a neat look. But a more natural look just may not fit in with that, that's all I'm saying.
but I'm thinking, but we did go down last fall, and when it got dry, you know, we went over and cut it all down. So, but I'm.
We weren't enamored with this whole paragraph, I mean,
Right.
but
But again,
how do we keep it focused on, we obviously don't want 12-inch grasses on a
solid.
large lot that's fire hazard.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying is, to me, 12 inches is fine. Nobody, we're working on common sense. Nobody's gonna come by and tell me I've got a bunch of this big with 12 inches that's gonna, if I need to cut it, I will. But I think 12 is fine. And, I just don't think we're gonna, if you have a whole vacant lot 12 inches deep and dry grass, you need to get it cut down. I mean, common sense was what we said we were gonna try to do.
I just wanted to share some information I learned a couple weeks ago from Chuck Lesniak. He's a gentleman who's very involved in Austin in their environmental protections and quality and water quality and all. Anyways, he graciously came and educated Councilmember Gardner and myself, and we asked this very question about specifically like our riparian zones, about how you're actually supposed to leave them untouched. And what he said was that, and this is relevant to your conversation right now, is that the grasses do not pose a significant fire hazard unless they're dry. And once a grass is dry, it's no longer seeding out anyway. Same with wildflowers. So the messaging should be, let it grow. Once it's dry, cut it. So you could consider that word dry in this conversation right now. The other thing I wanted to bring up is we do have several rain gardens in our community, and rain gardens will have grasses well over 12 inches year round, and they are supposed to. And so, just some things to consider in your discussion. I realized that
That's a good point, and my wine cups are more than 12. Now, they're in my backyard, so it's nobody else's business, I guess, but still, a lot of wildflowers are more than 12. Okay, right, that's very good information, thank you.
Should we say we took out dangerous? Should we substitute dry?
I think that's what's trying to be implied with that word personally. I think that is what dangerous means in the context of our city.
But I think dry is clearer
Yeah,
than
Yeah.
dangerous. Dangerous could
yeah,
be.
neither James nor I knew what dangerous meant, so yeah, dry we do know what it means.
Okay, so put dry vegetation.
Could it be dry or dried? Just dry vegetation.
Can be both.
Well, you don't want to say dry vegetation to grow, because once it's dry, it's not growing. We may have to reword that sentence.
Okay, so you guys tell me, what do you want?
You could say that to permit dry vegetation, that has grown to a height greater than 12 inches.
Okay.
Would that be good? To permit dry vegetation that has grown to a height greater than 12. Does that make sense, Jim?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. has grown. So that paragraph was unoccupied residential lot to permit dry vegetation that has grown to a height greater than 12 inches. And again, we took out G, the fire, that's under site development and fire safety. So we took out all of paragraph G, and we renamed the next paragraph G. Now, investigations and notice of violation. I must say, we pretty much stayed away from it. We took out H, which is the city may abate without notice dangerous vegetation. I'm not sure why that line is in there, giving it a special notice, because the paragraph gives the city the right anyway. And outlining, I'm not sure why dangerous vegetation would get its own little section or sentence. That's the only thing we did going forward, because we felt that investigations and penalties are pretty much the purview of the city manager and legal, the lawyer.
So where is the city authorized elsewhere?
They can abate any dangerous situation.
Yeah, but where did it say that?
It's not without notice, though, that I believe that's why Karen wanted to strike that, because not giving notice is actually illegal.
Oh.
So that specific thing was struck
Okay.
specifically for that purpose. And then what, to Mr. Miller's point, the entire section is about, the measure city will take.
Okay. Yeah.
The city in the notice of violation may inform the owner that, et cetera. And then again, I pretty much leave enforcement and penalty up to the city manager and council.
To go back to nuisance, I did find it, it actually was in the previous version of the code. And so when you all edited purpose, you edited it out. And so that might be something to consider, because like I said, it's one of those weird legal terms that's all over the place. Basically, these things are declared nuisance, thus the city will do X, Y, Z. And that's not necessarily something y'all have to do. I made a note that if it moves forward.
It's in the second sentence, as under purpose.
Yeah, and it was in purpose.
Yeah, we don't want to undermine the city's ability to, regulate.
I don't know that undermines it, I just think there's a lot of
I can
like
see it.
additional legal language that's,
We're not aware of it.
yeah, it just makes it a stronger argument for the city, right? If challenged.
How about if we say, prevent establishment of nuisances?
You could, so the city also promotes public health through regulation of nuisance. i.e. stagnant water. So you could say regulation of nuisance such as, but not limited to.
Are you guys good with that?
I like that, such as, but not limited to, that's good.
Well, it'd be plural, nuisances, should be plural. Nuisances such as.
But tell us where you are again.
Okay, we're back to 9502
Okay.
purpose.
Oh, two, yeah, okay.
And that sentence now reads, this is the last sentence of that paragraph. The city also promotes public health through regulation of nuisances such as stagnant water, filth, carrion, etc.
Such as, but not limited to, is what she said.
Basically, that just gives you that opening of like, if we didn't list it in this exact list, but it's still a nuisance,
Exactly,
it's enforced.
exactly. That's a really important phrase, but not limited to.
You okay, Randy?
Yeah.
Okay. Make sure.
That was a good catch, Wendy.
Yeah.
It was not
Good deal.
referenced anymore.
Oh,
Good deal.
Well, in the previous version.
okay, does anyone have anything else to talk about on that chapter 95?
Do we need to make a motion?
No, we're still in workshop.
On the penalty section,
Right.
C1 says, person that does not commit an offense under this chapter unless he is intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, or with criminal negligence engages in conduct as the definition of offense requires. So,
If it's accidental, if he has accidentally, I guess.
so to enforce this, my understanding to enforce this, it has to be proven that the guy, the owner or the person intentionally, knowingly, recklessly, that's a pretty high bar.
Not really, if the city manager goes and talks to him and explains the situation and explains why it's a nuisance, and then he ignores that, or he fights that, that would be intent.
That would be knowingly.
Or knowingly.
I don't think he has to meet all of those.
No, it says over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And recklessly, there's so many things that when even though it's a construction area, they have built 3 houses on my cul-de-sac since I've lived there, and you would not believe some of the things that went on.
Also, there's a nuisance
Reckless.
again.
Yeah.
Chapter, it says all this stuff is declared a nuisance. That's certainly, but I think I'm not a lawyer, but I've been at this for a year now. I think the point of that phrase, and it might need to be cleaned up, is that a person, by having these things, isn't necessarily criminally negligent
But that's.
just by having them.
That's the way we want it. We don't want someone to accidentally do this.
Well,
Or someone-
unknowingly, yeah.
Yeah,
But what the way I read this was we were leaving room for, let's just say me, a befuddled little old lady.
Who would insist on having prayer flags.
Yeah.
And who doesn't understand that they're not Christian. No, stop it, Randy, just behave.
we have a Tibetan flag.
Apparently I'm bitter about that.
I think it's just giving space for the idea that you're not criminally negligent if you just do these things. It's the act of like, we've informed you that you're not supposed to do them anymore, like Mr. Miller pointed out. Now, whether or not the language is great, I mean, I tend to agree that most of the language in this is messy and should
But our
also be.
intent was to leave it up to the lawyer,
Yeah.
the city attorney and the city to work that out, because now we're getting in, all we want is to make sure that someone doesn't accidentally.
Do you mean accidentally like that? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay, Randy? Good. Okay. All right, then, if nobody has anything else, we'll, at 3:22, we will move out of workshop and go to agenda item 3. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to finish with 95 and send it on to council.
I make a motion, we send chapter 95 on to, council's purview and see, let them go from there.
Second,
Second.
you want to canvass the committee?
Member Don Eckert,
Yes.
member Randy Renter.
Aye.
Chair Jen, is it Jen or James, which do you prefer?
It doesn't matter, yes.
James Miller. And alt member Emma Davenport.
I don't think I vote.
Can we, no, okay, yeah.
She does because your regular member.
We don't need her vote as a quorum.
Yeah,
No, but she does vote because you don't have your full members. So alternates become full members when regular members are not fully present.
Oh, it's not just a matter of having a forum? We thought it was.
No, no.
Oh,
Your vote counts if the full members are not present.
well, you guys can be a little more respectful to me now. Okay, sorry.
thank you.
Oh, I'll put your vet slide there.
Oh, shoot. Oh.
Okay, fine, then we'll move on to the next item, which is at 3:24, open up a workshop to discuss 156.061, home occupation criteria. Let me go over the changes that we were suggested. Under A, occupation, we added or any other after principal and located on the property. The reason being is the original wording just applied to the principal dwelling. They may have a shed or something that goes on, so we want to make sure that that it applied there, so they didn't put up a neon sign on their shed or something. Then down to E, there shall be no storage of merchandise. We added equipment or materials associated with the occupation. That eliminates G. And we added, well, I didn't do it then, but I looked at it again and I added or. When you say materials associated with the occupation on the property or on the outside of buildings connected with it. Yeah. We eliminated F. That was redundant to A. Let's see. Oh, okay. When we want the full committee to discuss J. I was not happy with the words utility, manufacturing, repairing, maintaining, or fabrication. And I brought up the example of the retiree who he likes to make birdhouses. So he puts up a bandsaw on his back porch and he's making birdhouses. He is in effect manufacturing. So I think or fabrication, repairing, somebody could be repairing watches or clocks. I mean, there's nothing, and so I mean, you guys tell me what you think about that. My attitude is we're doing too much to go inside the house to police it. And especially since the pandemic, I think a lot of people are wanting to do stuff at home. And
My neighbor does woodworking in his garage.
yeah,
You cannot tell it from, unless he has the door open, you cannot tell. And there's no sign of it anywhere else, and you're right, it would be like the.
manufacturing something.
Don't publicly tell on him right now. I don't know which neighbor it is. Yeah, you can't tell because the garage door is shut.
I was of a mindset to eliminate those. I'm not sure. I kept in industrial or laboratory. Industrial, in my mind, creates a whole different level of manufacturing.
You'd have to define it. to need to define what you mean by that or what we mean by that. But I agree with you, we need to protect our community while also allowing people to do, normal things, like please repair my lawnmower without me having to take it to somewhere else, you know, that'd be wonderful.
We also thought that it promotes people staying at home, being more watchful of the neighborhood. It isn't necessarily a negative. Now, I can understand how you could create the extreme, how it would be a negative with broken down lawnmowers or whatever, but there are provisions elsewhere to protect you from that.
Yeah, there's this unsightly aspect, and I did have a friend, who lived in Fredericksburg, and, a neighbor started doing, commercial woodworking, which was not prohibited, but it became a major nuisance because of the noise of the machine. Got bigger and bigger machines, and they were going all that. So we do have to somehow regulate it and keep it a residential community.
But there are noise ordinances,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
there's trash ordinances, there's
So we can
everything.
say, do what you want as long as you don't make too much noise.
Was there any enforcement on this anyway? Is there any penalty for doing any of this stuff?
Okay, I have a question here.
Well,
Maybe,
let me answer this question real quick. What city manager said to me is that they would not go inside a person's home without a court order or something. So I don't think even you can enforce this. I mean, I don't know.
Well, and I do see it says, the last one, which I had read but forgotten, the occupation shall not produce nor result in any external noise or vibrations.
Well, we want to delete that though.
I
I didn't put it in the packet, but I've since wanted to delete it. There's a noise ordinance in the city. So this doesn't do anything.
Or that noise ordinance doesn't have any enforcement? There's nothing, there's no.
Are you talking about the fireworks?
Well, after hours, you call the police, and actually the police who enforce noise ordinances in general anyway, unless it's during,
Like the constable.
yes. So like
It's 9 o'clock in Wood Creek, isn't it?
Friday and Saturday it's 11 p.m. So the CYJ fireworks were within regulation, and they have the correct.
is there any way we could use the first word occupation? I mean, if you're making birdhouses, that can't be your primary occupation. It's got to be.
No, it refers to the occupation of the home, a home occupancy.
Occupants, okay.
That's how the state
It's
works.
not the occupation.
Yeah.
Okay. I was trying to think how we can put in,
What would you think about
Probably
deleting
gonna
that whole J? I mean, do you really think it protects the city from anything?
well, I kind of covers it. Really. Permitted uses in the neighborhood, you know,
Keep in mind A,
and then J, I says, nor make the adjoining premises unsuitable for such permitted uses.
Man, Mr. Miller,
yeah,
I struggle not to give opinion at times in this committee because I'm really not supposed to, but you remember that we have zoning ordinances that regulate commercial and that kind of stuff and industrial. This already says you can't exceed 20% of your home. Your home must be primarily for residential use. We've already established that nobody's gonna go inside and check what you're doing or what you're doing, you know. I think you might have a point in wanting to strike J, just to be completely honest, mostly because I believe it's kind of redundant and it's unenforceable, and that, your best bet would be to basically, because you'd have to almost list what kinds of jobs are okay and not okay for that. Does that make sense?
Right.
Because what is a laboratory, right?
Yeah.
So is what I'm doing when I make skincare products a laboratory if I test them for microbes? Because I do have a laboratory set up for that, is, when, you know, for example, like if you look at industrial, the definition of industrial says to a large extent. Well, how do we define that? So I feel like that is redundant.
So what do you think,
And
guys?
that's
Take
true.
it all out,
Striking. I think
get
so.
rid of it?
Yeah.
Send it to
We're
the
working
trash
on
bin?
common sense, we're working on common sense, and I think Deborah's exactly right, it does not make sense, it's too.
And
too
remember,
undefinable.
these are your recommendations, if you fill them as a committee, right? They will go before council, if you pass this to council. The lawyer will also be present in that meeting, everyone can see your strike throughs, they're not disappearing. So, you know, that concept that we need to make sure that all of your recommendations address all foreseeable problems is not real. Like, you guys can make your recommendations as you see fit.
Talk to me, Randy.
I don't disagree.
Okay, let's take out J. Okay, next change I have is in K. I took out ultra. I was suggesting super duper as a alternative, but that didn't go over well.
I want it not
And
working.
then I would like to delete L, because, again, it does nothing, we have noise ordinances, that's,
Well, here's my concern about letting go of that. Let's just say that Randy lives next door to me and he builds birdhouses. And he gets really popular, so he's making, he's churning out 8 hours a day with his bandsaw. And I hear that bandsaw all the time. You're saying in our noise ordinance, you have to call the constable. Well, that's really not.
well, it wouldn't apply to prior to the time, the clock.
Exactly.
The noise ordinance applies to,
Exactly, so Randy can run his saw until 9 or 10 at night, whatever our time limit is, right?
All day long.
All day long.
well, let's
And then
change,
we have
let's,
an ordinance that doesn't allow a dog to bark that long. I'm not
Okay.
sure we should allow Randy to run his saw that long.
sure, let's think about changing the wording then,
Yes.
because it says any external noise.
It's say annoying.
Excessive noise.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
That's good.
if we're gonna do that, if we're gonna put noise on there, what about other things like, odor and sawdust in the air and, those could all be objectionable.
Okay, how about if we put,
What about that word we had, nuisance? Is this a good word to use here?
Yeah, I'm sure
I
it's in
mean,
this
noise,
bigger,
sawdust, all
no,
those
I
things.
think we should focus on what you're saying, annoying, or what did we say?
Excessive.
Excessive. Nor result in any excessive,
Oh, yeah.
excessive external noise,
that's important.
vibration, take out or, comma, vibration, comma, odor. You like odor, Randy?
Sure. It's becoming kind of, subjective.
Yeah, do we have a phrase that would encompass some of those, or other
Noxious,
irritants? Yeah, irritants, maybe?
Byproduct, that would refer to your sawdust issue.
Or physical irritants?
or any, how about, take out odor and put, or any other noxious,
Ah, yes.
Noxious irritants.
That would install this too.
How's that?
I'm just wondering what in the world people are doing that's the vibration. Like, where did that come
Boom,
from?
boom, boom.
Music?
Have you ever sat in the car and the next car to you was like vibrating your car?
So what if somebody does do these things? How is this gonna be enforced?
Everyone goes slap on the wrist.
Well, no, this is part of a larger section of code. You're not seeing the rest of this section of code, 156. Zoning.
Yeah, that's part of 156.
So that's why you don't see all those enforcement penalties.
Any other comments? Okay, at 3:39, move out of workshop. Now I'll entertain a motion to move the 156.061 onto council or any other recommendation you want.
I move we forward it on to the council.
Second,
I second it.
Candace, please. This next one, the booger.
Member Randy Ranger,
That's a technical.
Member Emma Davenport,
Aye.
Chairperson James Miller,
Aye.
and Member Donna Hector.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, at 3:40, let's open up a workshop to deal with 156.065. Which on the original text was called personal care facility. We have renamed it community homes for persons with disabilities. Now, the reason this was done, the original text is confusing. Disabled are a protected class, but not the elderly. And the original text merges nursing home with home care, and it's very confusing. Now, we included the text to show the state code. In your packet, there's the Human Resources Code, Title 8, Rights and Responsibilities of Persons with Disabilities, Chapter 123. What we did is we redid this paragraph to mimic the state law. So the first thing we did is under general, we took out general on paragraph A, and we took out Federal Fair Housing Act being 42, et cetera. Again, it doesn't apply to the elderly, and addresses the federal state restrictions in place. We took out that wording. Again, the applicable clause is 1, 2, 3. B, definition. And we changed all that to show the definition as it's shown in state code, state law. That mimics, again, state law. Now, an elderly person can qualify as disabled if mental illness or dementia or something comes into play. But just being elderly and nursing home law that doesn't apply. So all this definition that we have, again, you can switch to 1, 2, 3 and see we just simply copied the definition as state law shows it.
So is this trying to regulate those activities?
Well, under state law, despite what the zoning regulations state, anyone can provide for the disabled in their home. Now, so even if it's an SF1, if they wanna open up, if they wanna take in the disabled, they can.
For money, we're talking about for profit.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because oddly enough, they can't be related to that person,
okay.
okay? But again, it falls under state code 123, and it doesn't, so I don't know what went on when this was originally written, this paragraph. But they mixed up, and they've got nursing home regulations in here. That's why you'll see a lot of red ink on the next page, because that's all applies to nursing homes. Okay?
So this is designed, this section here is designed to specifically authorize or allow what you just said.
Well, the state,
They are allowed by the state.
what we're doing is,
So I guess that brings the question, do we need to say anything about it if the state already allows it?
well, I mean, it's like anything, even if the state law says something, we could just put a paragraph, see state law. But this outlines basically what the provisions are. I think people would like to know.
Yeah, if you want to do that, you need to be able to look it up on a city.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
There is an ordinance that kind of covers that, but these ordinances had to been adopted some time ago. And so the state law has changed, or we didn't update our ordinance according to what now is state law. So basically what the ad hoc committee did is they gave us what's now up to date and what is legally the way it's done now.
You can start a nursing home, but you can't violate the zoning restrictions of the city to do so. So if you're gonna put a nursing home in Wood Creek, it would have to be in one of the NC, I think NC zones.
It's just like if you open a daycare, you can open a daycare in any home, but you have to follow certain rules. You can't just say, I'm gonna open a daycare.
So if a person is going to a realtor,
Yeah.
and they say, well, I'm planning on doing this, then it's very easy for them to see what the rules are. Basic rules.
And they're very strict. You know, if you go to look at these, the state rules, they have inspectors and they come out and do all. So what we're basically doing here is updating, or what the ad hoc committee's done is basically updating that out of date. That's
So,
what was worrying me, was that it was so lenient about the caregivers and stuff.
So for paragraph B, or part B, we define what a person with a disability is. And then in C, we define what the community home has to provide. And again, that's straight from state law.
So if the state added another ailment or disability to their list right there, would we have to alter ours in the same way?
We got
Sure.
updated, no.
We have to constantly be monitoring the state law to.
Well, I don't think it changes that much.
We have to do that anyway,
Yeah.
in general, constantly monitor state law.
I guess I'm just questioning, why do we have to duplicate what the state is already doing?
Well, Randy, what we're doing is with the way it stands now, we've got a completely fictitious ordinance on the books.
Yeah, so why don't we repeal the whole thing?
Because if you want to take in 3 disabled people and care for them, that's for money, rather than have to go find out what the state law is, it's a convenience for a Wood Creek citizen to be able to look at a Wood Creek ordinance to see, first of all, is this even allowed here?
See, this law is pretty recent. If you look on, in the definition, it refers to statute text rendered on September of 2022. So this should be fairly up to date. And it just, you're right. I mean, if someone wants to do that, it's like a lot of things. They can refer and look up state law, but go ahead.
Oh, I just had a question. I didn't mean to interrupt you. So in hearing Randy, it brought up a point in my head of, and wanting clarification. In your edited version, I don't see nursing home facilities addressed at all,
No.
which I think is actually what was supposed to be the purpose of that original chapter. So I am a little bit concerned because that's what the city actually needs to regulate is the creation of a nursing home facility in a residential zone, I believe is what it was trying to regulate.
But we're not, this committee is not, structured to write a new ordinance.
I don't, yeah, I'm not
What we
saying
will-
that, but
we-
that's my concern here.
Right.
Is if you move forward with just your recommendations right now, we have not addressed, and so you might want to add that to whatever you send to council of nursing home facilities need separate regulation. And then to tie back to what Randy's saying, you're making great suggestions. What could also happen or exist is saying, community homes for persons with disabilities are permitted and because of this act, which you've done this great research. And you can say additional regulations are provided there. So it kind of alleviates the burden for the city to sit here. Because once you take down all the red stuff that you've taken out, the chapter is this big, so we could leave it or not, right? You can leave those regulations or not, you can leave all those definitions or not. It's
Well, I
not
think
that
most
big.
people don't realize that, because if you look at our last, the last item that we added, if you go to the next page, the last, it defines not more than 6 persons with disabilities and 2 supervisors. A community home, if you look at line E,
Yeah,
a community home that meets the qualifications under Texas Human Resource Code, Chapter 123, is a use by right that is authorized in any district zoned as residential. Don't you think?
that's a key point that you
That's
want to
right.
keep, for sure. That's why I'm saying all of that stuff in between, all of those really specific regulations, you could keep or not keep, you could maybe outline which ones you think are most important. For example, like the idea that no more than 6 people, and then, you know, because essentially all of this other stuff is regulated under that licensing. So that's not even really the purview of the city either. So Randy's point is valid. So you can pick the key points out of this that are for the city to regulate. How does the city ensure compliance? What could the city possibly be made aware of? That the city would be like, look, you're out of compliance, you have 12 people living here, right? That would be one of them. And so my whole thing was my caution or my request of you all is that you put some sort of note in that you have that nursing homes are not addressed in this, so that council needs to be aware of that and decide if that kind of more commercial use for the elderly is something we also need to address.
Well, there will be notes
Okay, great.
connected with these, because, for example, on the health and sanitation, committee person Duncan is dead set against privies,
Right,
and I don't think most people understand that.
Against what?
Privies,
Oh, yeah.
they're legal in Wood Creek,
I see.
but it didn't come into our purview, so there will be notes on,
great.
we would like,
Yeah.
and on this one, we can include our wording, and we can also state that something should be done about nursing home. However, what we found is that the nursing homes are heavily regulated by both state and federal. So we're almost, I guarantee you, if someone's gonna build a nursing home in the ETJ, they are not gonna worry about what Wood Creek thinks about it.
Okay,
They're
so-
gonna worry about federal and state guidelines.
Absolutely. So remember, we're in the zoning section, and this is talking about what uses of land are permitted where. So we would need to address where would a nursing home facility be permitted? Zoning concept, right? So that's the missing link here now, and that's the note I'm
Right, and
requesting.
we've got business use next. That's a very short one. But that one is one where you might think about referring, because a nursing home would more apply to the NC zone.
Right on, whatever recommendation y'all wanna make, that's just what the
Which
thought.
again, will have note to the council that NC zone doesn't appear anywhere in our ordinances,
Yeah,
even though we've got it. There is nothing in the ordinance. You look at the zoning chart, there's no NC.
that's what you mean, the zoning chart, cause it's in the ordinance, that's what you're gonna look at, but yeah, the zoning chart, it's not addressed. Yeah, I know.
Would, for Randy's point, would it be, a simplification, but yet still helpful to residents who need to find some basic information? Community homes for persons with disabilities, something on the order are allowed in Wood Creek as per Texas law, blah, 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 blah.
Sorry.
And then the pertinent information about the limitation of the number,
Well,
rather than spelling out all of these things that, as Randy says, are in Texas law anyway, and.
well, that's what E says. E says, if you read that, it's a use by right. And what it means is Wood Creek has nothing to say about it.
Well,
I
also.
wonder if that should be at the beginning then, to answer
Well,
your
it
question,
can be.
yes.
I believe it's in there already, A, the city zoning regulations must comply with the community homes for persons with disabilities that the state of Texas is, well,
And then you put the rest of
Period.
it right there, and that makes it clear.
So move E.
So that is E and A.
we explicitly state that the state regulates that
Yeah.
stuff and we can't.
Yeah,
basically.
okay, yeah, I'm seeing your point now that you made.
Yeah. The other relevant thing that I'm seeing is that idea that they must comply with the Human Resources Code. You might wanna cite that still, and then just for Wood Creek's purposes, the limitation on the number of people in residency would be very relevant. So number 2 and 3 on D. 2 and 3 on D, and that you must comply with the Human Resources Code. I think that in a nutshell covers everything.
What are you saying about 2 and 3?
So the 2 and 3 on D
Yeah.
would be something very relevant for regulation of Wood Creek.
Yeah.
That would be something Wood Creek would want to monitor and be ensuring of compliance.
That's why we added it.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. Key points of this, if you were to move forward with Randy, that I'm seeing as a council member are those 2 sections, and then the reference to the Human Resources Code.
So if I understand this correctly, we're talking about it A, we keep the sentence as it is, we add E to that, then we scratch everything.
Do you guys really wanna eliminate the definition?
I don't want, I think the definition, we're talking about common sense, so we're talking about.
Because someone may ask, well, who,
And they're gonna wanna know.
Yeah, okay, okay.
I
But,
think
but
that-
for someone to tell whether what they're planning to do is is legal or not, they wouldn't look here anyway, they'd wanna go look at the state regulations, because that's what wins. I mean, there could be differences between what we have, like, we haven't updated ours recently in the state, ours doesn't agree with the state's list of.
but do you wanna refer to the Persons with Disabilities Act and then not define what person with disability is?
I agree with you,
Well,
Randy,
we
that
have
they're
a-
gonna,
Can we identify it?
It's 1, 2, 3, and you've got a copy of it in your pack.
it's right here. It's right before, it was those 2
That's the-
pages before.
We included, just to make sure you understood.
Oh, okay.
That we're simply mimicking the definition of the state law so that people understand what we're talking about. That's all. We didn't mean to supersede the state law or say anything different. But we do felt it was needed to be included in case people question, well, what it constitutes a disability.
Could we just reference the state, code by name, by some identifier? I'm not sure how the state identifies this
1, 2, 3.
Title 8 rights and responsibilities of persons with disabilities. I guess,
the reason I'm thinking that you wanna put that in, say I'm sitting at dinner and I'm saying, you know, maybe we could do this. And I can quickly look up a code here in the Wood Creek instead of, I'm talking about the average person.
Yeah, waiting.
And if we cite this, then they can go into more detail, but I think when I'm trying to deal with common sense, if I'm just a person interested in finding out, I'm gonna go to Wood Creek and it's gonna list those things, and I'm gonna say, oh, okay, so I can bring somebody in with Alzheimer's, and, you know, because I've had experience with that, I know how to deal with it, but I'm limited to 6 people, with 2 people, two supervisors. And I'm thinking just for quick and easy. I'm not denying that, yeah, they're gonna have to eventually go to that major source, because here's regulations about cars and motor vehicles, location. It says a community home may not be established within 1/2 mile of an existing community home. So there's lots of other details that they're gonna have to look up, but
We
it's
just
gonna-
wanted to include the essential.
yeah,
So
I'm just.
paragraph B on my edited version is 123.002. Okay, verbatim. And paragraph C, which is the services they have to provide, that's 123.005. Plus, references to the human resources code.
I'm just thinking quick and easy information. It's not all the information, but, some of it.
Randy, do you have an objection other than that it's superseded by the Texas?
I just think it's redundant. It's
Well-
already in the state code, or we say it's in the state code, and there could be a time in the not very distant future that our code disagrees with the state code, so that a reader would be misled by looking at our code, because the state code's been changed and it isn't the same anymore.
So would you be happier if there were initially an announcement, look at the state code, it supersedes, but to the best of our knowledge, this is,
Yeah.
Yeah,
in a
something
nutshell,
like that.
something.
I just want to speak on Randy's point one more time. So typically in the city's code, we don't restate state code, and that's it. What we do is we will restate portions of state code that are relevant to our city, because sometimes not all of it is. And then we typically expound on that. So like there will be additional regulations provided. In this case, and I could be wrong because I'm speaking for Randy, but I think in this case, Randy's point is we're not adding any regulation here. We're just copying state code. So do we really need to do that? What are the bare bones in this that are relevant for Wood Creek? And I think we missed one. And I'm so glad you pointed it out, Donna, because the idea of the number of motor vehicles would be pretty crucial for Wood Creek, given our parking challenges. And so that would be one that I, as a council member, I would advocate to have put back in if this came to council. So that's just a point of something to consider. So you guys could look at it from that perspective. What if this is absolutely necessary for us? Are we adding any additional regulations by the city? And I think the concept that.
You're forgetting the original text. The original text is all wrong.
Yes, I know.
Okay. The goal wasn't to add or to be redundant for the state code. Our code was to correct that 156.065, which is wrong.
Right.
And so we corrected it now. Yeah, I mean, it's up to y'all if you want to just refer to state chapter
In
1,
that
2,
case,
3.
we could just eliminate it.
No, I think you guys are on the right track 100% by saying that the state protects these. We don't have any right to regulate them, actually. And here is how the state protects them. And here are the couple of things that are really relevant to Wood Creek: the amount of people living in them and the amount of cars that can be parked. Because those are two things that Wood Creek could ensure compliance on. The rest of it is ensured by licensing outside of us and defined by licensing outside of us. Wood Creek would never be like, I'm sorry, I'm getting to need to see doctor notes about your Alzheimer's, right? So that's, I think to Randy's point, how much of state code do we need to restate? Because we don't always restate all of state code. In fact, most of the time we don't. And I love the thoroughness that has been put into this, and I think you are absolutely right to want to break it out from nursing home facilities. And I think what you've done is great, and we don't want to lose that. But I think Randy has a valid point in that. How much of the state code do we really need to restate? What's
Well,
relevant?
as to parking, the code state code just says 1 per bedroom. But you can keep, and you know, I don't know how they're going to have a 6-bedroom home, but, or 7-bedroom, but, so there is that. As far as, and there's other restrictions like you can't be within 1/2 mile of another community. So they have that. But again, we just wanted to put the definitions in. So people know, well, what is a disabled? Since we corrected the disabled, the personal care paragraph to be disabled persons, we felt like we should define disabled person. So we use the same definition. But we did put in clarification that you do have to comply with Human Resources Code 123. So we need to come to a conclusion on this. What do y'all want to do?
Oh, okay, well. I like leaving the definition of what issues there are. I think we could, if you want to cut some out.
Do you want to put a wording in to satisfy Randy that
Well,
says subject to
I think
state law?
I think what you've got down here does that, under C, where you have to qualify as a community home, you've got that.
Well, I think he's specifically worried about the definition of a disabled person. Do you want a paragraph at the end, sentence at the end of that says, subject to change, by state law?
Yeah, that wouldn't bother me.
Would that be okay?
That's all right.
So you take out all the green part?
No, we'd leave that in,
But then,
but as far as you were worried about them changing, and so we would put a sentence saying, subject to change under state law.
Well, the B definition, the B definition and the C definition, in my mind, are just duplications of what's in the state law, and they're incomplete. The state law has more stuff than that, and I just object to putting parts of the state code into our code. Or I object to putting any of the state code into our code. I mean, it'd be fine to reference the state code to clarify for the reader that, you know, if these are regulated by the state, and here's where you find it, but I don't think we should duplicate the state code in ours. But I'm just one voice, so you're not gonna hurt my feelings if you decide to do something different.
the reason I was thinking of it is because if you have, sometimes it's hard to find places or ideas for people who have disabilities. And I'm just thinking this is a good list that if you're looking for someplace like for Alzheimer's, you know, it's hard sometimes to find a place. And if you looked up community home and you found one that was taking 6 people or 3 people or 4 people, that might be the answer to your, you know, or even diabetes, you know, to find some place to do that a person, because sometimes you don't think of disability and, you know, You think of disability as something, walking or, you know, cerebral palsy or epilepsy, but, you know, that's all. I was just, you know, how it is.
Emma, what do you think?
I don't, I feel like I'm on the high school debate team because frankly, I could make a good case either way. I hear what Randy is saying, but I don't personally object to this. I think it's clear.
I like what Randy's saying. He's, yeah,
I do see the point that initially, a resident, we want these to be helpful. Initially, it could be helpful to a resident to be able to see, okay, this is a possibility, but I have to go to Texas code. So I'm fine with it the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to eliminate this paragraph, we're eliminating the original text. And I don't feel like we're doing our job if we just simply say, well, that doesn't apply, go see state code. Now, I think to satisfy Randy, if we can a little bit, is to beef up paragraph A, move that E up there
Yes.
and make it, and emphasize the fact that the community home that meets qualifications under Texas Human Resource Code, Chapter 123, is a use by right that is authorized in any district zoned as residential.
And you wanna add, something to meet Randy's concern that be sure and check Texas code for updates on it. I agree. I would like to see E moved up to A.
Okay. And at the bottom of those definitions, add subject to change to state law, for state law.
I think that's good.
You'll get an updated.
Thank you.
Okay. What about the D part? Reading. Is that still? Yeah, I think you guys like 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is I'll just change let's see, we've got A, B, C, and D. Just leave those.
Back to not cluster.
Oh, you're doing great. Thank you.
It's
Okay,
always
at,
fun.
4:10, move out of workshop. Okay, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to move the 156.1065 on to council or whatever you choose to decide to do with it.
Am I allowed to make?
You're allowed to make motion. Aren't you?
Still saying yeah, are you? I don't care. All right, all right. I move that we send 156.065 community homes for persons with disabilities as amended to council.
I second it.
Canvas.
Is he right? Am I allowed to make?
Absolutely. You become a full member when you attend and a full member is not present.
Okay. Welcome back.
All right, you ready? Chairperson James Miller,
Aye.
member Donna Heck,
Aye.
member Randy Renter, sorry, Randy.
Abstain.
And alt member Emmett Davenport.
Aye.
Okay, at 4:12, I'll open up a workshop to discuss paragraph 156.080, business use requirements and limitations. we had very little to do with this. As I said, because the two zones referenced in this NO and NC don't exist anywhere else in the ordinance. Although we have one NC, which is that little, is that purple?
Mhm.
That little purple square up there, that's the liquor store. That's an NC.
And there's an empty building on the end, the empty
Oh,
part at the end of it.
It's a sausage manufacturer.
Oh, it is. Yeah, I didn't know
Is it part of that?
There's no sign.
Because they only manufacture sausage to be sold elsewhere.
That's interesting. I thought it was vacant all this time.
No, I wanted to occupy that space and found out.
Okay, what we did on this one is the first sentence was struck. The city is divided into 6 business districts. That must have been copied from code elsewhere or whatever, because we don't. And we substituted any zone, permitting any business or commercial, et cetera. And then we changed the city's business districts, we changed that to zones. Now, we made no other changes, because again, this is,
I would like to make a change.
sure,
Seeing as how the apartment buildings are in literally my backyard, they got a special, thing to build an 8-foot fence. And I would tell you that that has been a lifesaver instead of a 6-foot fence. It has made an enormous amount of help with lighting, with noise, with privacy. I would, if people agree, and think about it. If your house is there and there's a business next door, most people are 6 feet tall, they can see over your fence without a problem.
yeah, the fence next to the liquor store is 6 feet.
Yes.
And there's a duplex right on the other side.
I would suggest that we change it to 8. If that's possible, without too much havoc,
What do y'all think?
because it makes a huge amount of difference now whether,
Show me where it is.
Oh, that's in,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
it's letter E.
E.
It says commercial lots or
Okay, yeah, I see it.
residential shall be 6 foot high. Privacy fence, I just can't, and I didn't know any difference at the time, but it has made a huge difference. Having that extra 2 feet.
No, the practical experience is very helpful. It's one thing to do it on paper, it's another thing to live next door to it.
And, with SUVs being as tall as they are and things, I mean, if you have a car parked over there.
Emily, like 8 foot?
What would be an objection to change?
Can you think of anything?
All right,
It's gonna be- it's gonna
I have no opinion.
Keep in mind, we only have one lot that applies, because for the apartments, what's the status of the apartments?
What do you mean status?
They're a different kind of residency,
They're,
a family residency.
yeah,
You only have one now. There's nothing preventing someone in the future
in the
from
ETJ.
request, or no, here inside the city limits, you can request zoning changes.
Oh, that's right.
So like areas that if Wood Creek were to become more of a city, right? That would be subject to concern would be all of Wood Creek Drive. It's the most traveled road in our city. It is a cut through road. All of Wood Creek Drive could have some sort of zoning change for this kind of stuff in the future. It's not a crazy thought. Do I hope it happens? Absolutely not. But just something to keep in mind. Our code, once somebody's trying to do something, it is too late to write code, right? What we have to think is we have to be forward thinking in any code of what do we want our city to look like and how do we protect that?
Deborah's brought up a point. I used to live on Caney Lane, if you've ever been over there.
In Austin?
In Austin. It was totally a residential street. On the south side of it now is a 4-story, huge apartment house. The other houses along the entire street have been turned into businesses. The entire street from Lamar to Burnett Road was a residential area, and it's now all commercial. I lived right off of there on Sunshine, which is,
Do you want
Cul-de-sac.
8-foot fences put up anytime there's a, let's say one of those Wood Creek houses becomes a coffee shop?
well, probably the fence would probably not go to the front of the property, but it would be at the back, you know, toward the back of the property.
Yeah.
So, you know, because but you would be protecting it says adjoining the residential zoning district, so you would be against whatever the house would be.
I'd like to provide a little bit more context too. Something that has been up for discussion several times in our city and was actually supported by the previous city manager, Brenton Lewis, is the idea of putting up 8-foot fences on any lots that border, for example, Ranch Road 12 or Jacobs Well Road.
Yeah,
back
that's in
to-
fence and it's not in this.
No, I understand. I'm saying there is more context there for this idea of when are higher fences permitted or when are they desirable, right? So I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just providing additional context for your decision making.
Yeah, I was thinking privacy fences were disallowed, but that must not be
It's
true.
just on the golf course.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
You
on-
live on the golf
Right.
course. Golf course, you can't prohibit.
And you can have them up until a certain point. We have one on one side of our house, but we had to end it abruptly at the edge of our house. And then it proceeds to the visible fencing, so everyone can see my kid screaming.
Okay, we have a suggestion on the floor for an 8-foot fence.
Does anybody have an objection to that?
Could that be regulated at the time of the zoning change?
Well, it would, if it's zoned NC and this is passed by the council, it would then automatically apply.
And
The liquor store's not germane.
I really don't know who, but I know they got a variance somehow to build the 8-foot fence.
The apartment.
The apartment people did. Now, I don't know why exactly.
It was part of the negotiations and benefit for the city. As
So,
if you're gonna do this monstrosity,
right.
you have to do, and that was one of the things listed.
And also, not that it has to be in here, but what was kind of humorous was they put the fence up. And they got it almost to my house from around this way. You want to tell them what's happened? They put it backwards. I was supposed to have the residents have the best side,
Yes, the neighbor friendly side.
Flat
the
side.
flat side. Yeah, so they had it almost halfway around. And they had to go back and turn it around. Yeah. So, but anyway, but I just think that the 8-foot fence, and then if you get a variance to build a 6th one, it doesn't work. I do see that, I do see your practical,
Reason for this, and if it were my house, I would certainly appreciate that they were required to put a higher fence, frankly.
What do you think, Randy?
and if they have if it's a business, they may have a dumpster out there. The dumpster's gonna be 5 feet tall.
At least, yeah.
What do you think, Randy?
Give us your input, Randy.
I guess I don't have a strong opinion on it. The privacy fences are kind of ugly anyway. I'm not sure that that's an improvement, but maybe it is.
All right, let me write in the week.
Well, don't make a judgment about the privacy, it's just whether a resident is benefited by requiring that a business make a higher fence than
Yeah.
is presently required.
Can you smell the sausage, mate?
Is it noxious? Is that what you're asking?
I've never even seen anybody over there.
You know what's funny is only NC zone in the city, the occupancy is not listed under the permitted neighborhood commercial zone.
Well, I'm concerned about that list. Well, it's just always risky to make a list because you can't think of everything. I mean, I'm thinking massage therapist, I'm thinking there's a lot of things that it could be, or sausage maker, you know. Although we do say include, but we don't say that this is a.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
obviously because we've got a liquor store.
Yeah,
Or
okay.
similar professional offices.
And other-
Well, it says and other retail stores.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be honest with you, I'll pass this to council, what my immediate step is going to be to look up the code for mixed use zoning in other cities, which I've looked it up countless times. But they do a great job of sort of highlighting what are permissible businesses buried in neighborhoods and what aren't. And they've done a lot more work and research on like what that is, because that's a traditional zoning regulation, mixed use.
Right.
This is really interesting to me. I've not really run across this before. I've seen neighborhood offices addressed. It's usually under mixed use zoning. A neighborhood office is then defined as these things. I've never seen it as its own, like, separate entity like this. This is really interesting code to me, but I'm not like an expert by any means. So that's just, if y'all don't have immediate recommendations, if you pass this to council, I can tell you right now that I would probably dig into that section and kind of reword it because I think it's a little wonky.
Well, I will definitely send this with a question as to why NO and NC are not listed on zoning charts, and there's no attempt to better define them. I mean, I think this paragraph is wholly inadequate. I mean, it's not a question of defining the occupancy. It's defining how it relates to the city as far as the water usage, what type, if there's manufacturing, I mean, there's a whole long list of them. And I guess the difference between NO and NC is that NO is the preferred occupancy, you know, the white collar, the lawyer's office, whereas NC is more the commercial retail operations.
On Burnett Road, on Caney Lane, I think there's at least 2 tattoo parlors. You know, I mean, there are new kinds of businesses always coming up there, and there's nothing here about, you know, says television or electronic sales and service. You know, there's so much tech stuff that goes
So
there.
remember in the last meeting, I talked about the idea of establish what's prohibited, and that's it, right? So your phrase there about specifically these things are prohibited, that's important. The rest of it, like trying to create this ad nauseum list of every possible business use.
I
think it's gotta be bigger than us, though. I mean, we can each, here in this committee, give our opinion, but that almost seems like you should canvass the city itself.
Well, again, state law says a lot of this kind of stuff because a city has the ability to regulate land use to a point, right? And so it's about creating zones and then saying what's allowed in them. So that's why I was like, I'd like to look at actual zoning code, because this is strange. The way this is written is strange.
Right.
And so that's where I think we're kind of like, maybe like, I think just recommending this up to council would be appropriate move for you all, and just maybe even like your questions or your concerns. And then council with legal, right? Because at this point, this is almost even like, Roger, like, what is this? You know, like, and how do we fix this? Because this is strange wording, not really great code to start with. And then, you know, what do we need to put in to regulate what citizens actually want to regulate? Which I can guarantee number 2.
Yeah.
Is absolutely needed.
Yes.
Nobody in this city wants us selling fireworks here, we can't have them. We don't want fabricate on-site, like, industrial fabrication, this is where that word industrial will be important, on-site dumping of fuel, or we don't want a gas station buried in the middle of Wood Creek, you know? I'm not touching the other weird stuff in there, but.
Well, how about if we refer it up to council with the note that, more extensive research needs to be made on this, and that, the exclusions should be long thought out and, but assuming we can do that in the ETJ, I don't even know if we can do that.
You cannot regulate land use like that in the ETJ. You can't.
But you're worried about changing zones.
This only applies inside the city limits of Wood Creek. There is no zoning in ETJ at all.
So let's eliminate, permitted uses, because I think that's a useless list. I mean, we can come up with a lot of things that would be fine. But let's ask council to, as you said, give a great deal more thought to exclusions and have that live. I think that is important to have what's not.
We don't even define permitted neighborhood office or neighborhood commercial. There's no definition
For those two.
in this paragraph.
Okay, well, then it needs, this whole thing needs a lot of.
In reading them, the difference is provision of service versus sale of goods. The
Where,
examples given.
where did you,
It's just so again, this is my understanding of general codes, right? So when you looked at mixed use development code, it's often defined in that way, meaning you can have neighborhood offices that provide services, but no sale of goods. That's one step of mixed use code. Another step is allowing retail operations that sell of goods. That's bordering closer to commercial and is typically a different kind of mixed use development. And there's typically like scales, oftentimes color coded, right? So that when you read these examples, that's how they're trying to define it. They're providing examples, which is a bad way to do it. First off, you, like you said, need to define what these are. Neighborhood office, service based. Neighborhood commercial, sales based, goods based. That's a really good recommendation to make and change. You can, per Emma's recommendation, if you want to talk about what's permitted, those were those words, such as but not limited to come into play, because you can provide that definition. And this would include things, for example, accountant, but not limited to, right?
Mhm.
should I eliminate those paragraphs, or should I just highlight them in yellow for you?
I think you just leave them and add all of these notes of your concerns and like the thing, honestly, to me, this needs a full rewrite. Just what I personally believe. Who does that? I don't know, but the suggestions you've made at the top address immediate concerns with this being out of alignment with the actual city.
Right.
The rest of it could take some time to rework, potentially maybe need legal to weigh in, definitely need somebody to dig for several hours,
Again, my concern is those zones as defined aren't located anywhere else in the ordinances.
right?
And that worries me. I mean, what are the lot restrictions?
Right. Where could they pop up? Can they pop up on Parview? That's crazy to think about.
So
Because that's
if you define and then the question of like the fence, well, we can change 8 foot, but do you want, an NC lot, a small lot on Wood Creek Drive to convert to NC? I mean, but you would have to, in your zoning, you would have to define what the minimum lot requirement is for NC.
Well, and if it were on Wood Creek Drive, you can't have a privacy fence anyway. Usually, you have another ordinance that you
Oh,
can.
because there's all sorts of-
You can have them up until the back of your house.
You can't have it the way Donna's talking about.
Not currently.
Well, we would just hope for good sense, future councils don't do something like that, but
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be funny though, to just install an 8-foot see-through fence? That's what's required on the golf course, is a see-through fence. So then this regulation would require an 8-foot see-through fence? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we need to be, yeah, we need to be a little careful.
like those see-through garages.
Oh, that's another issue.
Okay, so it looks like, I'm sorry.
So are we gonna send it with
Well-
reservations
well,
or questions?
What I think we've agreed on is that we'll make those small changes that we discussed. But, we'll send it with a list of questions or advice to the council to look into this much further, to put these, zones in the zoning charts so they can define minimum lots, et cetera, So they require a lot more legal description than is found here. And as far as the occupancies, we don't want to necessarily start listing preferred occupancies, but we do think we need to focus on excluded occupancies. Does that sound right?
Although I would like an antique store, but still, yeah.
Or someone selling Tibetan flags?
You're just trying to get me in trouble. Not gonna beg you.
Okay, at 4:35, we're closing the workshop. And someone give me a motion.
What is it? Does this read 2 6-foot pins or 8-foot pins?
I changed it to 8-foot. And eliminated that first sentence and changed reference to district to zone. Those are the only changes made. The rest is going to be, you guys got some work to do.
I move that we send the business use requirements and limitations to the council for their further study with, the revisions we've made, but with many questions that they should be looking into. And especially in defining the, zone requirements for permitted neighborhood commercial and permitted neighborhood office, to define those.
Second.
Canvas?
Back to you. No. Sorry. Member Don Hickert,
Yes.
member Randy Renter,
Yes.
all member Emma Davenport,
Aye.
and chairperson James Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Rowland, before you close the meeting, can I request that when you.
You can call me Jim. Or chairperson.
Chairperson Miller, or chairperson, when you send this packet, please include your revised documents, the state code that you had in here, the previous code like you did, that is perfect. And then, a separate sheet with these notes and questions that you all have produced in the meeting. And then make sure to copy staff. And then what you would like the items to say on the agenda, please include that, because, I will submit the items for you all. But I just want to respect the wording that you all came up with rather than interpreting it for myself. And then I'll just adjust it to make sure it fits with like the way it's supposed to be reading in the agenda. Does this make sense?
About council agenda?
Yes, the council agenda. So just put, in your packet, put these are the items we've sent to you. This is the direction, essentially. So I get that wording right for you because I submit it, and then just make sure you copy staff because they need the record of all of this flowing around, especially if I were to miss submitting the item, then they can submit it on your behalf. Or for example, I need to be copied in it because if staff misses submitting the item on your behalf, I need to be able to say, hey, ordinance review sent us 4 items, this needs to be on the agenda. Does that make sense? So just copy both of us and then make sure your packet is really full and rich.
Well, PDFs or documents?
I personally would prefer PDFs because of the way these computers operate. And then I also can't accidentally change anything. It just remains clean and,
Okay, I'll get it to you by tomorrow.
oh, no rush, but, cause I won't be able to make it. I could potentially submit it to the workshop for workshopping if that was something you wanted, but it won't, it would have to go on the next full agenda.
Again, our feeling is that we are a citizen opinion
Yes,
committee.
yes.
It is not meant that our revisions are final versions of any ordinance.
Understood.
It's assumed that, city staff and the city attorney will have input on those final documents.
Are you wanting this to make it on the workshop? Cause I would need to submit it by Monday then. Or do you wanna just wait till the next council meeting?
That's up to you. I've turned it over to you. I'm gonna turn it over to you. And that's the extent of our role.
Your body could take a vote and direct me at this point in time what y'all would like. I'm asking what you want me to do. Cause I have the time. It could be on the workshop. Where do you feel is the most appropriate location for it? Should it go to a council meeting immediately and wait until May?
Again, it's not a finished product, so we don't view it as a finished product, because we are not legal experts, and we can make mistakes. We are a citizen committee that gives our input.
So, explain to me, so the workshop you're talking about is a city council workshop?
It's a city council workshop, and the way I've been viewing it are things that we just want to be able to discuss in a more informal manner.
It's
They're
more
not
appropriate
to the workshop. So do you want to try to make it for this next workshop then?
And the entire meeting is a workshop.
Yes, we do take action. We exit the workshop, and if there's actionable things that we need to take care of, we will. For example, like with this, the council could decide, send this all to Roger and let him deal with it. Or the council could decide, oh, we'd like to create an ad hoc work group. Or the council could say, actually, Hines, why don't you get back with the ordinance review committee? Here are my suggestions. Y'all workshop this a little, I mean, I don't know what they're gonna do, right? And they might just turn their noses up at it and say, what, we love the code as it is, good luck.
But your workshop is not, already for a specific purpose and full. What I don't want is for us to be dumping extraneous stuff and.
We can
making your
submit it,
workshop-
we can submit it, and if the workshop is too full, then we just bump stuff,
I see.
and Mayor Rascal will get with me about, hey, are you okay with bumping the ordinance review items? What we have discussed in the past, me and him personally, is that it's really nice to have a full scope of like everything we need to address. That way, if like things go together, we can stack agendas better. It's also good to know if we have a lot on our plate, we can more easily schedule a special meeting then for later in the month and have that time period where he can make sure we'll have the right amount of people for that. So it's just one of those planning things. The more foresight he has, the easier it is for him. It might get bumped from this workshop. We're not guaranteed to make it, but
That's our point. We don't want to be forcing them to pay attention to something when they have other things that they're.
Yes, we do.
We do.
We do.
Scratch what I said.
We want them to pay attention to our work. And I think the workshop is if you're gonna have two choices, workshop or council, council's gonna get this raw, and a lot of it, you're gonna take up a lot of time asking questions about, well, why did they do it this way? Well, why did, and you'll be there to explain, because you're the liaison.
and you are also welcome to attend always, any of y'all.
You don't want that.
It's just like it makes more sense to us when we learned we could do a workshop section.
Oh, yeah.
So
That was a great thing.
I'll make a motion that we send this to the workshop.
Okay.
A second.
You're on. I apologize, we went past forward, because we had a lot to do.
Well, we started late. Too.
I think y'all work very efficiently, personally. I've covered a lot of ground.
Well, give it.
Well, made a motion, go take a vote.
I know, I'm just waiting on
He's
you.
ready. Member Randy Renner? Alternate member Emma Davenport? Aye. Chairperson Joan Marilyn?
Aye.
And member Donna?
Aye.
Alright, thank you.
What kind of patio like? Oh, we're still on meeting.
Are you talking about
State the time and stay adjourned.
Okay.
When you're ready.
As of 4:43. We're adjourned.
Yes, I was gonna.